Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Back with us on the program, author John Brewer. John moved frequently as a child, living in Kansas, Oklahoma, California, Alaska, and Alberta, Canada. He studied at Johns Hopkins University, BA in biology in 1960, Ph.D. in biochemistry in 1963. He took his postdoctoral experience at University of Illinois from 63 through 66. John's career started at the University of Georgia in 1966, from assistant to associate to full professor at the University of Georgia. He has over 100 professional scientific publications. He's been reading history books as a hobby for many years. He's a successful printed author. We're talking about his newest book, Pilgrim's Journey, on today's program. Number 5 in a series of John Brewer books. John, welcome back to the program. It's great to have you back with us today.
Thank you. Great. Good to be back.
It is always a pleasure. Fascinating to talk about how you do these books, historical fiction, and really an excellent job, especially in the character development in detail with these books. And I mentioned in the beginning that you read sort of as a hobby as a child, was reading history. Is that where this all started when you were reading? Did you ever think that someday you'd be publishing historical novels?
I don't know. I had and still do have plots, scenarios, if you like, running through my head that get worked out to varying extents, but whether they actually get transmitted into books depends on what I happen to see, what I happen to hear, what I happen to read. The Pilgrim's Journey started as a book 15, 20 years ago. I wrote about the first fifth of it and then put it aside. I don't know why. Then I decided after the first 3 were published, I would finish it up and continued it. I had it worked out in my head in great detail, including some of the dialogue. But as I went along writing it, it kind of escaped. I did a lot of reading. I do my research. I do my homework. And I was struck again and again. The characteristics of that age were, on one level, a great deal of mannered elegance.
And that comes out in the book. Let's talk. The book is Pilgrim's Journey. It's one of 5 from John Brewer. His website is historomance.com. You can link on directly at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. We'll be talking about that today. I mentioned the other books and all the information on those books available at his website. Let's talk about the particular era you're discussing in Pilgrim's Journey, a book that, from what you're telling me, this had to be written. You tried to avoid it and put it off on a shelf somewhere, and it just kept coming back to you. Tell me about that period and some of the main characters.
Well, on another level, it was an extremely coarse, violent, cruel age. And the principal character, the narrator, what he says he saw did happen, was going on, and he was living in that age. It's interesting. The first, my wife was reading through the manuscript after it was finished, and she commented that the first fifth read as though it was written by a different person.
That's interesting. So when you put it away and went back to it, obviously, at least your sensibilities and that changed over that period. How you approach that changed over that period.
Well, I had a hard time integrating the first fifth or so with the rest of the book. I eventually put most of it in, cut it down, rewrote it, and put it in as a flashback toward the beginning of the book. That was the best I could do. But again, the rest of it, as I was going along, seemed to take control of itself. things turned out very differently from the way I had originally intended.
Well, I was going to ask you, say things turned out. I wonder, and you talk to authors and you get their different techniques. When you go into something, and when you were writing Pilgrim's Journey, was this where you had sort of an idea, okay, this is where it's going to start, this will be sort of the middle, and this is where I'm going to wrap it up? Do you go in with a format, a structure when you start writing?
Oh, yeah, I have it worked out in great detail, even to a good deal of the dialogue, but as soon as I got into it, it just sort of took charge of itself. And the final product was rather different from what I intended.
Is
I
that different
think
than the other books that you've written, or have they followed a similar course? Or are they all different?
they're all different. They're all different. Some books that I wrote as chapters, but not in chapter order, and integrating them and getting them integrated took some doing. Uh, but it varies. There's a kind of internal logic that builds up and takes over. I think the late Tom Clancy remarked, I read this a few months ago, that some of his books basically wrote themselves. And so I guess that's really true if you get involved in a plot. Uh, you have to follow the logic of the situation and the logic of the characters and see what happens.
And I guess a lot of that is predicated on the fact that you've done your research. So this is making some sense, I guess, as maybe subconsciously it's like, okay, this is the direction we're going to go in. But having laid that foundation, you're prepared with research to take this book just about anywhere, aren't you, as you're writing it?
Not anywhere. It has the logic of the situation meant it had to go in certain directions, and that was the direction I was just writing it down. I was following orders, as it were.
It's like, go write it down because somebody is speaking to me now and I've got to get these words down on paper. Pilgrim's Journey is the book we're talking about. John Brewer, back with us on the program, author of a number of historical novels, Matthew Dobbs Esquire, Millwood Village, Pilgrim's Journey that we're talking about, Terpsichore, Good Man's Croft, and he's working on another book, Golden Mary, which will be coming soon. His website is historomance.com. Information on all of the books available there. Of course, the book's available at Amazon as well. And by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you can log on directly. The main character we're talking about here is Thomas Wyeth, and this goes back to colonial Massachusetts. What was it about this particular era that caught your attention? Was it something you read as a child as you were reading historical books of history?
Yes, as I said, it struck me as I mean, all the things I've read about it, the contrast between the upper layers of society, so-called, and the lowest layer of society was stunning. And you had this guy born in a what we would call a middle class family. He's trying to make his way, earn, get his education. He's looking for love too. Uh, but uh, he grew up a little self-centered, a little selfish. He's the only son, the firstborn. His sisters defer to him. His parents don't know quite what to do about him. Uh, he's kind of rattles around until he decides to become a doctor, basically, because the girl he was in love with suggested it. Uh, but he was inclined in that direction, and with that push, he went in that direction. But he's an outsider. And in those days, and up until fairly recently in Britain, medical students were not the cream of the crop in Britain. They were considered only a cut above journeymen, uh, a cut above peasants, I guess you'd say. But he was smarter than they were, and came from a very different background and saw things from a very different point of view, and came up with ideas and approaches which were rather in advance of the time.
How do you go about doing research on something like that? And Pilgrim's Journey, we know it took years for it to actually, from beginning to end. In terms of research, how much research goes into a book like this?
Well, I don't take the trouble to write an appendix for the readers, but there were books on the British occupation of New York, for example, British Army. I have a book here on sexual practices in London. There was a book on the education provided by the University of Edinburgh Medical School. There was a book on the education provided by Harvard College in those days. And there were books on people's upbringing in those times. That's about all I can recall.
Is the research fun? I'm gathering that you enjoy the research part of it as well, which is a good thing, and it's obvious in the writing because it's rich in its historical details. Some people, I got to do the research to get to the writing, but I really like the writing. I get the impression, especially with your background in history, that doing the research is a fun part of this as well.
I've been doing that for many years. It must be. It must be.
You keep going back, so you must enjoy it at some level.
Yes, and I mean, this accumulates. So when I start writing, these details start coming out. But sometimes I feel I need more information, so I read some more, or reread things for more detail. The latest one I'm rereading for certain details of how people spoke, for example. But
And that's Golden Mary, and I mentioned that's one that you're working on now. This is set back in the mid 1500s, so it's a little different period. This is going to be interesting when we have a chance to talk about that. The book we're talking about now is Pilgrim's Journey, and I mentioned Thomas Wyatt, the main character in the book, and he's really looking for a future with his first love. Talk just, we don't want to give too much away here, but that really plays a major role in the story.
it did, as I wrote it, because her family was very loyalist in sympathies, and they wanted to marry her off to another loyalist family. Thomas was just the son of a lawyer from the provinces, and just not considered good enough, and so she told him sorry, and he was crushed by this, so went off. Later on, he before he left Massachusetts, he wrote her a letter saying that if she ever needed any help, he would give her any help in his power. Then he went to Edinburgh, got his MD, went to London, became a practicing doctor, met another woman, and slowly she began to displace the first one, until he found out that the first one needed help, and so he had to go to New York, which is where the British Army was at the time, and see if he could help her.
And you will find out in the book Pilgrim's Journey. This book, along with the others you've written, some of the recurring themes are love, respect, survival. Are those some of the main areas you try to work into the narrative?
Well, yes. He's on a quest. That's why he's a pilgrim.
Yes.
And he crosses the Atlantic 5 or 6 times on that quest. A quest for qualifications, quest for love, quest to keep his word. Yeah.
Pilgrim's Journey is the book, the newest from John Brewer. The other books are Matthew Dobbs, Esquire, Millwood Village, Pilgrim's Journey, Terpsichore, Goodman's Croft. Soon will be Golden Mary added to the library. The book's available at Amazon. Of course, you can go to John's website, historomance.com. Talk about in developing these characters, and we've talked about characters in other books before, and I'm almost thinking I don't want to say necessarily it's an extension of you, but you really think these characters through to the point where I don't know how you even get them out of your mind. When you go to bed at night after you've been involved in writing all day, can you just turn it off and put Thomas to bed beside you and you go to sleep and not think about him?
There's an internal logic to the characters that I carry with me, and that controls what happens. That controls what the character does. I don't write continuously, sometimes only a few pages a week. But I always have it in the back of my mind. And so the question of writing it down becomes almost mechanical.
Well, I was going to say, you hear so many people, authors that say, I go every day, 7:30, I'm sitting in front of the computer. Whether I'm productive or not, I never know, but that's what I do every day. And it sounds like you sort of wait for that inspiration to get that idea. And like you said, when you go to the computer at that point, or however do you do the computer or do you do this longhand typewriter? Yep, longhand. That's the old-fashioned way to do it.
Write with a pen.
That's the way to do it. So when you sit down with that legal pad and that pen, it sounds like you're ready to go at that particular point in time because you've got everything sort of formulated. At that point, it's an outlet rather than sitting there trying to force something.
It just kind of takes off. When I have to stop, I stop. But when I get the time and the opportunity, I start again. I know where I am. I know where I have to go. I have a day job.
Yeah, I mentioned that at the university. The students, they all buy your books? Those who pass, do they buy your books? I'm sure it's interesting. The gentleman up in front of the class is a published author, and he's pretty good at this.
No. I wouldn't try to sell my books to the students. That brings up ethical issues.
Yes.
And so far as I know, none have ever bought. Well, there was a graduate student in our department who just bought a copy. I don't know why, but he's not my student, so it doesn't matter. Faculty members are fair game. And other than that, I pay for various promotional gimmicks by one or two of the publishers. There's 3 publishers involved in the 5 books. That introduces an element of confusion. So I really, at times, like to retreat to writing.
Because that would be a nice outlet. Just go give me that legal pad and let me write the story and not worry about the business aspect of it. Got about a minute or so left in the program. The Golden Mary, how close are you to publishing that?
It's in what I would call second draft form. little shorter than Terpsichore, 53,000 words. Got lots of sword fighting and lust and good things like that.
Ooh, now that'll be interesting.
Yes. It's set in 1536, Henry VIII's England, when Henry VIII managed to close the monasteries, and that sort of set the stage for also all kinds of opportunities and conflicts.
Well, we will find out about that in the newest book coming out shortly, Golden Mary, written by John Brewer. The newest that we're talking about on the program, an excellent read. It's Pilgrim's Journey, historical novel. It's available at John's website, which is historomance.com. Go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on and go directly to John's website. And, of course, the book, as all of them, available at Amazon. John, it is always a pleasure. Really enjoyed Pilgrim's Journey. Once again, an excellent job. You do such a fine job throughout the book. The characters, as you start reading, you really care about the characters. And I guess that's a positive sign that people are like, and I read that in reviews, that people really enjoy the characters, the character, and the story development. That has to make you feel good when you sit back and, okay, I've written the book, I've enjoyed it, I published it, and now you start getting the feedback. What's that like when you get positive feedback?
There was a book I read some time ago where one of the characters said to the protagonist, to the performer, praise is salt. To the writer, praise is oxygen.
Sort of validation that, okay, this process was all worth it, that people are out there enjoying the stories. And the fact that as you're reading this, you're getting some history as well as the story of the characters is sort of a bonus. The book is Pilgrim's Journey. It's available at John's website, historomance.com, available at Amazon as well. John, always a pleasure. Look forward to having you back on the program. Good luck with Golden Mary, and best luck with the Pilgrim's Journey as well.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us.